So there you go. Steve Jones, again, who's with us this morning, supply chain expert, retail consultant. Hello again to you, Steve.
Morning, Sean.
So just hearing what Dave Lewis is saying there about Brexit, is there anything you take away from that?
Well, I thought what he said was actually very, very measured. And the one thing he didn't mention, which I thought was quite interesting, is assuming that if there is an interruption, it will be mainly from products from Europe. There could be a benefit for Tesco because I'm assuming Aldi and Lidl source a lot more of their product in Europe than Tesco do.
So basically, it's going to be the stuff coming from Europe. Do you think that Dave is repositioning himself because Tesco have had to compete with the likes of Lidl and Aldi? That means they've got to cut costs, but at the same time, he's got to reposition himself in the order that his margins are going to be unaffected. And that's a pretty tall order, isn't it?
I think part of the trouble is as soon as anybody's on the radio from a large company, they've got so many different audiences they're trying to appeal to. They're trying to appeal to the city, they're trying to appeal to their staff, and they're also trying to appeal to their consumers as well. I thought what he said was very sensible. Everybody I've been working with over the last few years just wants people to get on with it. It's the uncertainty that's the killer.
And is he losing market share? Because, Lidl and Aldi are gaining market share from somewhere.
Well, I think they're all losing market share to Aldi and Lidl. But I don't think that an interruption in the supply chain is going to make it any difference, because if there is an interruption, it's going to affect all of them.
So chuck into the mix. You've got to keep investors happy. You've got to keep customers happy, particularly on price. And then, of course, the last year or two, the war against plastic and single-use plastic has really become a big feature for lots of big businesses. So Steph McGovern asked Dave Lewis if he thinks Tesco is doing enough to reduce the use of plastic.
Steve, you're obviously not an expert on packaging, but do you get the feeling that supermarkets actually want to totally eradicate plastics from the supply chain? And who's picking up the cost of this packaging? Is it Tesco or is it the actual supplier?
Well, I think the point that there are two key issues here, aren't there? The first is what are consumers prepared to pay for? Because if you look at what happened with the plastic bag, as soon as you started actually charging consumers for plastic bags, the consumption went down by 80% almost overnight. And the other issue is how are the government going to incentivise people to make the behavioural changes? If you think about when products go through, I mean, Dave was quite right about when products go through the supply chain, every time you handle it, the cost goes up. And as soon as they start putting loose produce in store, the staff are going to have to go around, they're going to be trawling over it because, I mean, if you go into a shop and look at, for instance, bananas, the damage there is absolutely massive. The other issue as well is, are we not massively bothered about traceability? I still remember Horse-Gate. And as soon as you start taking stuff out of packaging, there's absolutely no way that you can trace where it's come from. And the other issue, of course, is the hygiene. I'm not sure I want everyone touching my food before I buy it.
Is there no way to trace food when it's not in packaging?
Well, I mean, what they do with eggs is they're all stamped, aren't they? I'm sure you can't do that
because they're in their own packaging anyway.
Well, indeed. But I'm sure you couldn't do that with every strawberry, could you?
No, I see your point there. Just finally, Steve, we've had a few people getting in touch about Aldi as an example in terms of those more value budget supermarkets are actually upping the amount of UK sourced food that they're providing. Susan saying Aldi have a preference for UK sourcing. Other entities around Europe are different. Are you seeing that supermarkets are moving more towards just where we produce our food here in the UK?
Well, I've been working with one retailer that's been planning for Brexit for the last 3 years. And obviously, if you're not planning to start sourcing more product locally, you'd be insane, wouldn't you?
Gotcha. Well, there you go. Steve Jones, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Steve Jones there, retail consultant, supply chain expert. That's it from Wake Up to Money this morning.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.